can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Now, this is the second time in as many weeks I've spoken to Richard Wollstonecroft from the Melbourne Underground Film Festival, otherwise affectionately known as Dick from Muff.
Yes.
A second time, people won't know I spoke to you last week, Dick, because I didn't mention it on the time that I actually pressed record on the machine. So we spoke last week, but I didn't record it because I pressed the wrong button. Or in fact, I didn't press the button at all. So no one would have known I had spoken to you last week, so I don't even know why I mentioned it. Anyhow.
We spoke to the wind, mate. We spoke to the wind.
What?
We spoke to the wind. We just chatted to us.
So I'm looking at the machine now, and it's definitely recording you. Now, Dick,
right.
I've been out of the loop a bit because I'm up here at Airlie Beach, and have I had some interesting times up here? Anyhow, and I'm a bit out of the loop, so I'm deferring to you for... I just noticed on the... I watched the local, not the local news, the Australian news here this morning just to see what was going on. And the main topic seems to be the rampant crime that is prevalent in Victoria and has been for the best part of a decade, but getting worse and worse, probably under a Labor government. I don't know if that's a political statement or not, but crime seems to be pretty soft when it comes to nailing people for breaking the law. And I notice it's on the increase and people are nearly fed up with it.
Well, youth crime, isn't it, Sam? That's the anachronism. I mean, what does that really mean? Is it these kind of wild Sudanese youth out in Dandenong that are committing a lot of these crimes and they're too politically correct to say that's what it is? I mean, obviously I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but there's some of that going on. I don't know, maybe, really bad drugs like crystal meth are getting to young people and they're going a bit crazy. I don't know what's behind the crisis. I mean, obviously, society has been deteriorating and connections, broken homes and all kinds of trouble have caused teenagers to go even crazier than normal.
So we should be even-handed. Youths of African appearance, there are gangs of those people going around threatening people, but there are gangs of Caucasian youth going around doing exactly the same thing, so we shouldn't discriminate necessarily on that. And I notice a teenager out on bail, stole a car and killed a trainee doctor. That's been all over the news. He was out on bail. And surely the first duty, the first providence of a government is to make sure that its citizens are safe. And this has just got worse and worse because of lax sentencing, lax bail conditions, and I want to know, they did this in the United States. A boy shot some people in a school, I think, and they charged the parents with neglect and being indirectly responsible for the actions of their son. I'm wondering where the parents of the boy who stole the car and killed the trainee doctor are, who was out on bail for the second time and was meant to be under home duty or home care or home restriction. I'm wondering why people don't, unless they have already and it's not made public. I'm wondering why the police and the authorities don't look at that particular aspect of what's going on.
Well, I think, parenting has changed, hasn't it, Sam? I mean, in the 70s, stealing something from the local milk bar was a big deal. You know what I mean? They get you killed basically back in the 1970s. But now it seems like you can steal a car and you can be on drugs and you can be driving around. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously parenting and charging the parents isn't a bad idea because I think if you do make the parents in some way legally responsible, I think that does create a further impetus to at least try and control their unwieldy teenagers. But it seems to be the problem has almost maybe gone beyond the parents. I mean, is it necessary to have some kind of, I've always been fond of the idea of, maybe in some countries you have to join the army for a year, and a year of army discipline. I mean, which is, often just, regimentation and marching in order and making your own bed, things like that kind of basic military training can do young people a world of good. I mean, is it time to maybe bring in, that kind of thing for young people? What are your thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, of course, that is theoretically a fine thing to do, but you're going to have that many people push back on that. But that at the end of the day, for that dreadful saying, at the end of the day, governments are in power. Unfortunately, they make decisions to stay in power rather than making decisions in the best interests of the community. And so if that was a realistic thing to do and you thought it might, after you've had a whole bevy of experts and meetings and seminars and white papers delivered and God knows what, if they all decided that or the majority decided that was a good thing to do, then you have to have the guts and the gonads to implement the policy. Because what happens is most reports get given. Just have a look at the state government about the reports given and how they thumb their nose at anything that is counterproductive to their chances of getting re-elected. And as I say, the first duty of providence of any elected government is the safety of its people. So in Victoria, it's going just from bad to worse. We go over this all the time. The COVID restrictions, the budget deficit of about nearly 200 billions, the cancelling of the Commonwealth Games, the thumbing their nose at anything that might have checked on their legitimacy and their integrity. They thumb their nose at those court cases, the routing of Ian Cook, I Cook Foods out for the government-run Institute of Community Chef. People just overlook that, think that's a trivial thing. That is the most horrendous, almost the most horrendous thing they've ever done, not because it's I Cook Foods, just because they took off a free enterprise company doing well and made up a bogus charge, bogusly charged that company so they could put their own organisation in, which went bankrupt and ran out of money, our money, with almost the day it was implemented. So then we go on with, and I just hate to just keep bringing this up, but we go on with there's a treaty that the Victorian government are about to introduce. We spent $500 million on the yes/no vote about whether we should have a treaty for Indigenous people, and the most divisive document. But it goes on and on. The arrogant stupidity of genuinely mediocre sycophants go on and on. They take no notice of any plebiscite or any questions that the public were asked, and they go on and on. And I'm going to read out this, and you say that this has nothing to do with racism. This is they're eventually trying to take the country off the people who live in it and give it over to some people who are just Australians like us. Everyone on the planet in this country and in this state had nothing to do with what went on 200 years ago or 300 years ago or whenever. But people just take no notice of it, and they keep. And I'm going to read. This is a public notice. This is a public notice from the Victorian government. I think it's from the Victorian government. Read it out, mate. I'll just, if I can just get it up on the phone here. Hang on a minute. There we go. This is what it says. It says, just a minute. Dick Christ, I can't even work the phone properly. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to read this out. It says, the Treaty Authority gives notice under Clause 17B. See if you can work out what this means. Of the treaty negotiation framework, that the process for identifying the entity that is to be entered onto, not onto, into, the negotiations database and the First Peoples representative body to negotiate a statewide treaty on behalf of First Peoples will commence on July the 3rd, 2024. What in the hell does that mean? What that means is we're going to feel guilty for being in this country. We've had nothing to do with anything that's gone on before it. We are classed as second class.
Yeah.
We are treated as second-class citizens, and they're eventually going to keep going and going, despite all the plebiscites and all the all the things that decide the elections of any person that decides, no, we don't think this is reasonable. How about we all just get on together as Australians? And they're eventually going to take the country off the people who live in it and rename it, reboot it, rejig it, redefine it, reassess the boundaries of it. It's just for what reason? Surely there's enough Indigenous people who push back on all this stuff and say this is ridiculous, but it's the vocal minority who push and push and push under the and no one is game to do it except people like us, people like me, who get singled out as being a racist. And I would contend with the least racist people. We just want people to be Australians and not have to beg or suffer welcoming ceremonies or fireworks or whatever to live in our own country in harmony.
Exactly, mate. And look, Tucker Carlson, I saw him last week, and he made a great point about this. And he said the whole point of all this, welcome to country and all this stuff to do with treaty, it's got nothing to do with helping the Aboriginal people at all. It's to let all Australians, probably including Aborigines, that this country isn't theirs and that this country belongs to the global government elite who rule over it, who can bring in this unpopular and undemocratic nonsense whenever they like, and that it's really about taking away the sovereignty of all Australian citizens who have built this country up over the last 200 years. And he made a really very interesting point about that, and he's obviously American. He's come here and just noticed our culture for the last 3 weeks. And I thought that was a really interesting point he made, because it doesn't help Aborigines, all this nonsense. It's generally, these ideas are put together by generally white, upper-middle-class people who are part of the elite. You know what I mean? So it's not about helping Aborigines. That's just a nonsense. And it's really about making the average, everyday Australian feel like they don't belong in their own country, which is the whole purpose.
It's about money. So
money, yeah.
I'm up here. We went deliberately to the Nara. This is Sue Stanley here. Nara Inlet, because they said there was some. There's some cave paintings and some not memorabilia. There was
artifacts, aren't they?
Artifacts, but there was a tribute to the people who were previously on this land before us, and we went up and we read all the stuff, and it was good. It was fantastic, and there was a handprint there, and you put your hand over the handprint, and you said, "We are united as one," and enjoy the experience. And we felt enlightened and evolved as we went up the stairs, and there was a cave up there with artifacts and paintings, very faded, but I couldn't help thinking that the council have just jigged up a couple of the paintings, because they were stark. As you walk in, the first thing you can see looked like paintings hanging on someone's living room wall. I'm not sure how they lasted the distance, but maybe they touched them up just to give the impression that it was a sacred site, and it was fantastic. And it was to see how previous people who occupied this land lived, and it was fantastic. But rather than bludgeoning the population to feel guilty, I'm glad I went and saw it, and it was good, and we spoke about it, and we just were respectful of the time that we were there, and respectful of the people. But for heaven's sake, what are we trying? What we're going to end up feeling guilty? The whole community is going to feel guilty of actually being part of the land that we developed.
Should we feel guilty for bringing, education? Should we feel guilty for bringing hospitals? I mean, hospitals benefit the Aboriginal community. Should we feel guilty for bringing electricity? Should we feel guilty for bringing roads, ships, trains, aircraft? I mean, it's ridiculous, Sam. But, I mean, growing up in the 70s and 80s, I mean, I was always proud of the Aboriginal heritage. We all learned about it. You would go, I'd say on holiday, you would visit Aboriginal sites, or you would visit Aboriginal museums, and it was always, Australia was not a racist country, and I'm sure you were the same growing up in the 50s and 60s. You would see exhibitions, or you'd hear about Aboriginal things, and you were fascinated. As a proud Australian, you were as interested in Aboriginal culture as you're interested in what came afterwards. You know, like it was
Dick,
never a racist thing.
Hey,
Yes.
Dick, you know what the funny thing was? I was actually really impressed that he went there and he did the whole tour and it was fantastic. One thing he was very disappointed was the graffiti on the rocks as we were coming into the inlet, wasn't it?
Yeah, we came in this most pristine, heritage-listed, beautiful part of the country, Australia, and there were rock faces. And as you got closer, you could see people had deliberately taken spray cans of paint, and they had painted their name and the year that they were there up on the rocks. And I thought, holy mackerel! What is the mentality of people that would just want to put their name? Some of them, I can't remember the names. What would they spray painted their names on this magnificent area? And I thought, holy mackerel! Yep. You got to wonder. These are the people, and these are the people that live in our land, and yep. The Indigenous people would be absolutely gobsmacked at the stupidity of people. I was gobsmacked at it. I thought. What?
You know, that's terrible that they're despoiling such a place. And, you know, I'm not a fan of that kind of graffiti, and I'm a fan of a place like Singapore, where they cane the shit out of you if you do something.
Yes, cane the shit out of you. So it sounds like that we're on a rant about them and us. I am on a rant about them and us because it's us, and so many people say it's us. And why do they go on with this after we've had, as I say, we've had an inquiry into it, and the overwhelming result was no, we just want to live together. But they go on and on. They take no notice of it.
But that's division, isn't it, Sam? It's all this diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not about making feel, inclusive. It's actually about dividing people. You know, you see they've announced an envoy for anti-Semitism, and they've announcing another one, an envoy for Islamophobia, and they've also announced a minister for men's behavioural change in Victoria. There's all these new kind of ministerial appointments that are based around this kind of diversity, equity and inclusion agenda.
Yes, and if the Victorian government could just concentrate on getting the debt down without taxing us out of existence, and just make some sensible decisions of how to keep the public safe, they'd go a hell of a long way. And if we could just get Dan Andrews, I noticed finally that Dan Andrews has been subpoenaed for him and his wife to give up their phone records of an incident that happened 18 months ago or 2 years ago. So the question begs the answer: why would you have to wait? Why, when you're asked the first time, why wouldn't you hand the phone over? So this just smacks. This is what is the trouble with the previous Andrews government. They were so corrupt and so dishonest and so incompetent that even their leader has to fudge giving over his phone. For what reason? If they've got nothing to hide, give it over.
Sam.
Pardon?
You must have something to hide. Why would you keep it secret? If someone asks for your phone records and you've got nothing to hide, you would just say, "Oh, of course, here they are," and you publish them in the Herald Sun yourself. You know?
No, he might have things that are in the national security interest or the Victorian. He might have things on it that he mightn't. But surely an independent body could go through and say, no, we won't announce that you had a conversation with this person or that person, but we will. That's a government business. But if it's to do with a car accident and the boy who got hit it was alleged that he got T-boned. He T-boned the Andrews car, which seems to be complete nonsense. But I'm just not sure why. Anyhow, I think it's going to be made public in when, Sue? It's in the middle of this month, isn't it?
I think it was the 25th of July or somewhere mid-July.
Yeah, he's going to be hand over, and we can just see what it is that the people in the car, if anything, were trying to hide.
He might have Stormy Daniels' number in there.
He could have, but he could have messages from President G, saying the deposit has just arrived for, Belton Road.
Speaking of all things America, now you wonder how the credibility, besides the obvious nonsense that's going on over there at the minute. Do you remember a person called? You won't remember him, her. This person who is a non-binary freak called Sam Brinton. Do you remember him? Sam Brinton Brinton was employed by the Biden government. He is a non-binary person who stole airport luggage off the carousel.
I do remember.
He wore women's dresses. He shaved his head bald. He wore over-the-top lipstick. And he was in charge of the nuclear waste disposal program by the government, who he got the job on the DEI scale of diversity, equity and inclusion. And he was up because a woman who I think came from Brazil recognised her dress, that he had stolen her luggage from the carousel when she went back to Brazil or wherever, or Colombo or whatever. She was a dress designer, and she saw him being interviewed about the nuclear waste disposal program, and she said, that's my dress he's wearing. And they found out that it was her dress, and he'd similarly stole at least three other bags off the carousel for women's clothing and was wearing it. This is a person that got a government job as the nuclear waste disposal expert, and he's been up in court, and they did not give him jail time. They asked him to write a letter of apology to the people's luggage he stole, and gave him a slap on the wrist and said, do that and all will be forgiven. And you wonder how people who jaywalk and get 3 points off their license or it is incomprehensible how that government is working at the minute in America.
I have no idea how they choose these weirdos that they've been employing. There's another one somebody called Levine, who was like some kind of transgender health expert. Was also in the military.
No. Her name is Rachel Levine, and she was Frank Levine. She was a bloke, and she turned herself, and she is the head of the. She's a 4-star general or a 4-star Navy commander, head of the Defense Department, and every time they put her up on the screen, you just think that the people in Russia and Iran and in China and in
North Korea
would just look at that and say, what is going on? It's got the job purely on diversity, equity and inclusion, and it is an horrendous look. Doesn't matter if she's a good-looking bloke or a good-looking woman, she is a dreadful-looking person, and you don't have to be a good-looking person to hold down government jobs, but you look at it and you just laugh and you think, how do you...
They're laughing at it.
They're laughing at us.
Yeah, they are. And after that debate, after the complete disaster of a debate for Joe Biden, I mean, the whole world now knows that Joe Biden is not running the American government. I mean, you know, it's just, I mean, even the mainstream left-wing press in America is turning against Joe Biden. So I have no idea if he'll even last for the election. Maybe they'll do some kind of coup and get rid of him at the Democratic National Convention. But, like, you know, they're leaking things now on Joe Biden that they have to give him like a kind of a guide about how to get to the podium, which is like a photograph. You know what I mean? I mean, think about that.
I watch it all the time, mate. It's just, and the people responsible mainly, 90% of the people responsible are the dishonest and sycophantic media who back him up, and just because they dislike Trump so much, just will lead anything that... Joe Biden, who is genuinely stupid, corrupt, dishonest, he's a liar, he's got dementia, he's got Alzheimer's disease, he is a bumbling, stumbling buffoon, and the media say, no, he's quite cogent, he's quite coherent, you see him, he didn't have a good debate, but I've been with him personally, they say, in private, and he's as sharp as a tack, he is as dumb as a rock. He's over at NATO now. So tell me why we and New Zealand and someone else in the Southern Hemisphere, why are we over in NATO? It's got nothing to do with us, NATO. It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. Why have we sent people over there to bolster up what? Surely we're not in NATO.
This is the deep state. This is who's really running the show, obviously. You know, this is the group of people that just want forever wars, and obviously they've been fomenting a forever war with Russia in Ukraine. You know, obviously we've been arming Ukraine. Ukraine is running out of young Ukrainians to kill. Even Zelensky's talking about wanting peace, and obviously Donald Trump is talking about wanting peace, which would be a great result.
Yes.
Because obviously, who wants people killed on either side? Who wants Russians killed? Who wants Ukrainians killed? It's all horrible. You know, as Donald Trump once said, people are dying. Of course they are. And this war should have ended within 2 weeks of it starting. You know, they should, anyway.
Now, finally, Dick, just Julian Assange got released, and with a great fanfare and triumphant return to Australia. It's gone pretty quick. What has happened with Julian Assange? Julian Assange? And you are close to Julian. He's come to some of your muff functions. And
he used to come to my nightclub. I used to run nightclubs in the 1990s, and he came to there, and he connected our nightclub to the internet. He was known as the Mad Professor then, and obviously he wasn't famous in the 90s. He didn't become famous until around the late 2000s when he started WikiLeaks. But, you know, he was known as the Mad Professor, and he was a sweet guy, blonde hair, you know, but no one knew the internet like this kid. And obviously people 30 years ago didn't think the internet was going to be that big a deal.
Where is he? Where is he, Dick?
Well, you know, John Shipton he's obviously met his father when he got freed, and he met his wife. So he's back in Australia, which is the great news. And I think he's just gone into hiding because obviously he's been, you know, imprisoned in Belmarsh, which is like solitary confinement for the last 5.5 years. And then he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. I think he's probably going to take a few weeks, probably a few months to, you know, just calm down and, you know, get himself, you know, back together again. You know, I imagine it was a traumatic experience. And that's what I hear, but he will start doing interviews and come out of his shell, hopefully before the US election.
Now, just to wind up a little bit of overseas. Now, what's the boy Baldwin's name who's charged with shooting? Alec
Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin. He's they've just selected a jury. He's charged with shooting dead a cinematographer because he said he didn't pull the trigger, but the gun went off in his hand. Yeah,
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard that's gone off in my hand. So he's Alec is up in. What do you think? Would they make a political? What do you think they make a political decision here? He's a great Biden fan. Do you think he might get off because of his politics?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's got a Republican judge, so maybe it'll go the other way for Alec. You know, I mean, look, it does open an interest. I mean, I guess it's manslaughter. I think whenever you kill anybody accidentally, it's manslaughter.
It is.
You know, it will come down to whether they. I mean, the weird thing is he was given a gun that had a real bullet in it, but he was actually like, you know, threatening people. He was saying, you know, he was making threatening intonations like, you know, I hate you, and you know, I should just shoot you, and then he did fire the weapon. He obviously, I suppose, thought it was a blank in there.
Oh, I think he probably thought that, Dick, I think.
Yeah.
And he was probably tongue-in-cheek saying all those things, that he would play act and horse round a bit. But,
you do.
Yeah, anyhow. And now, I noticed this. You heard of someone called Kevin Bacon? Kevin Bacon is an actor.
Footloose. Footloose,
yeah.
Mate. Footloose.
He went into... now, I wonder if this has happened to you. I don't think it's happened to me. He went into disguise just to give himself some anonymity, and just wanted to see how he could handle people not recognise him. And he said it was shocking. He said it was he didn't like it at all. It really sucked that people didn't recognise him. I thought, my God, why would you admit that? If would you care? I was trying to think of a lot of people, for whatever reason, recognise me. I thought, if no one recognised me, I probably think it'd be bliss.
Well, I was going to say, Sam, if you tried it, you could maybe put on like a kind of false mustache and a big kind of Mexican sombrero, and wander around, see if people notice.
Oh no, you'd be charged with. No, you couldn't do that. You'd be charged with.
Appropriate.
Yes, culturally inappropriate. I can be inappropriate without being culturally inappropriate. But I might put a fat suit on and start sweating and spray. Yeah, that's right, and have dreadlocks or my hair in a bun and put some tattoos on, and just like most of the public are, fat, overweight, and tattooed. So not sure that.
What are your thoughts on that, Sam? Do you think? I mean, as somebody who has some local fame yourself, would you prefer being famous, or did you prefer before you were in the public eye? I mean, how would you analyse that situation?
Well, look, it's a bit like saying the people that say money's not everything. They're the people who've got who are either billionaires or don't have to worry about money. I can say, just personally speaking, I could say, well, it wouldn't worry me. But the fact is, you're never going to find out because you are who you are, and you are known for who you are, whether that be good or bad. And what would be the point of trying to disguise yourself every morning and walk out and be trying to be someone you're not? So seems like a futile exercise. I don't know what he was doing it for. And then he thought, no, I want to be recognised because I can get my car, I can go to the front of the line at airline tickets and counters, and I can get coffee given to me by people who like me, and I can. So he wasn't happy with it at all. So he learnt a very rude lesson quickly, that you better stick to who you are and then put up with it.
Yep, that's it. I think we're all born one person. Good on you, Sam.
All right, Dickie. So that's good. Well done. I'm looking at it. You've been recorded. We'll bid you adieu, and we will see you on another occasion.
All right, Sam. Great talking, mate.
All the best, my friend.
All the best to you and Sue. Bye.
All right.